Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy little human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's Morbid makeup video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this craziness today, you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bradderstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing a young woman named Jennifer Pan. Are you familiar? Well, if not, Jennifer Pan was a woman who in 2010 in Canada, she paid 3 hitmen to come into her home, stage a home invasion, and murder both of her parents. Yeah, it's a wild one and we're gonna get into it. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell because I put out a new Morbid makeup video every single week and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And you can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you want. They're both Bradderstein, but no pressure. So now that we're done with that self-promotion and I'm done like begging you to be my friend, we can get into this case. So Jennifer Pan. Wow. So I don't know exactly how I got interested in this case. It wasn't suggested to me by anyone, but once I started looking into it, it was just a wild ride. From Jennifer's strict upbringing to Jennifer, basically she was living a double life where she was lying about basically her entire life to everyone she knew, her friends, her family, everybody. No one knew what was really going on with her, to the ultimatum her parents inevitably gave her, and to the crimes that she ended up committing. Like, it's a lot. There's a lot of details. And while you're listening to this, you might think that she's young because I forget how old she is, but I need you to know this is a grown-ass woman who did this. She could drink. She could rent a car. This is an adult. Okay, so don't feel so bad for her. With all of that said, I should probably get into telling you the details because there are a lot of details to this case. So come, gather around and let me tell you the story of Jennifer Pan, her double life, and her quick fix to her perceived problems. Jennifer Pan was one of 2 children born to parents Becca Pan, her mother, and Huey Hann Pan, her father. She was born in Markham, Ontario, which is in Canada, and she was born on June 17th, 1986, making her a Gemini. Both of her parents were from Vietnam and had immigrated over to Canada separately, both as political refugees in the 70s. The couple met in Canada and clearly bonded over their shared culture, their goals and background, and they ended up falling in love and marrying in Toronto, Canada, before moving to Scarborough to start their life together and have a family. Their first child born was their daughter, Jennifer, who we're going to be discussing a lot today, and then the couple had a baby boy in 1989 that they named Felix. Both Hann and Bich both worked at Magna International, which was an auto parts manufacturing company in Aurora, Ontario. Hann was a tool and die maker and Bich made car parts, and the two were just incredibly hard workers. They were just trying to have that dream, the refugee dream, where they leave the country where they weren't doing so well and they come over and build a life for themselves that they can be proud of, essentially. They wanted to ensure that their children were set up for success, that they had the upbringing that they never themselves got to have, the same thing all good parents want to do. And so they worked super hard, and because of their hard work, they actually ended up being able to do this. By the 2000s, they had a good amount of money saved up. They were living in a nice house with nice fancy cars. Like, they were killing it. They had very started from the bottom, now we're here energy. In wanting what was best for their children, Hann and Bich were pretty strict parents, super strict parents. They were not about nonsense. They were like, you're going to do good in school. When you're not at school, you're going to be doing extracurricular activities that are going to push you towards being the best version of yourself you can be. And it wasn't like, we want you to do this. It was like, you will do this. This parenting style is called authoritarian style parenting, and it basically means that a lot is expected of these kids. Small mistakes are typically responded to with punishment, and it could be considered mentally abusive. There was absolutely no reports of physical abuse, but there was aggressive, unyielding expectations put on these 2 kids. And I actually just quickly want to say that none of this backstory on Jennifer's parents is to excuse what she did, because there is no excuse. It's just to explain her upbringing and how she got to be the type of person that she was. By the age of 4, Jennifer was already taking piano lessons and was an incredibly talented pianist. This is actually where her passions lied, in becoming a piano teacher when she was older, and she was also taking figure skating lessons starting at a very young age, where she trained almost every single day. As a child, she was actually even working towards being an Olympic figure skating champion, but she ended up having to stop because she tore a ligament in her knee when she was 14 and was no longer able to compete. Jennifer also played the flute in the school band in her teenage years while attending the Mary Ward Catholic Secondary School. When Jennifer was in school, her parents would pick her up from school every single day to ensure that she was only going to school and then coming straight home. They were very good at monitoring what she was doing in school and all of her extracurricular activities, and she was not allowed to date. She was not allowed to go hang out with friends. She wasn't allowed to go to parties. She wasn't allowed to go to school dances. They didn't want her doing anything that would distract from her studies and making sure that she was the best student possible. But this didn't really seem to work, and all of their efforts seemed relatively fruitless because though they were like really on top of her trying to make sure she got everything done, in high school, her grades were just kind of like good, not great. They were just so-so. She was really good at physical things and very good at the arts, but academics were not her strong suit. Jennifer's parents never really got to know that Jennifer wasn't a very strong academic though, because Jennifer did not feel like she could let her parents know that she was struggling and not doing super good, especially because her brother Felix was a very strong academic and she just felt because of her upbringing this would be unacceptable. So she actually started lying about her grades and forging her report cards. And this right here was just the start of this giant web of lies that Jennifer Pan started to weave, where she was essentially lying about everything and living a double life. Initially, Jennifer had been accepted for early admission for Ryerson University, a college in the Toronto area, but after Jennifer failed her calculus class in the 12th grade, they rescinded their offer for early admission, so she was no longer going to be able to go. But she didn't want her parents or friends or anyone to know this because to her, failure was not an option. So she started lying to everyone. She told her friends and her family that she was going to Ryerson, that she was attending right now, even though she wasn't even going. She lied about her grades. She lied about being accepted to that college early. She even lied about graduating high school because she had never even gotten her diploma. And this is a point in Jennifer's story that I actually find a little odd and a little inconsistent with how I see things reported, because Bich and Hann were described as being super into Jennifer and Felix's grades and their schooling and this and that, and being very like attentive and like on top of that. So I don't really understand how they didn't notice that Jennifer didn't graduate high school. Like, were they not curious that she didn't walk? I find that part a little bit odd, but everything that I've read says that they were really on top of it, but somehow they just missed that she didn't graduate high school, which you might be thinking the same thing when I'm saying this, like how did they not notice that? I couldn't tell you, and they're not here to ask now. So because when Jennifer was growing up, it was pretty strict. She wasn't allowed to go anywhere. She wasn't really allowed to like have friends and do like the normal teenage things. She grew up super duper sheltered. Obviously, by the age of 22, she had never been to a club. She had never been drunk. She had never been able to like go on vacation with her friends. She was never really able to do anything like that without her family. So she grew up pretty unhappy about this and felt sheltered, and she just wasn't happy about the way her parents chose to raise her. I think she felt oppressed, and honestly, that's a little bit fair. I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna, be open to everything, but again, it doesn't explain what she goes on to do, because a lot of people have strict parents and don't turn into Jennifer Pan. So we're getting into Jennifer's lies here. While she would be telling her parents that she was in class, doing the damn thing, she would actually be chilling in cafes, drinking her little coffee. She had started teaching piano lessons on the side, and she'd be doing that. She got a job at a restaurant. She was doing anything she could to fill her time and have enough money to keep up her charade. When her parents would wonder, why aren't we having to pay any money for college? She would tell them, I got a bunch of scholarships. She just started lying about everything, and they couldn't even be just little lies with Jennifer. That's kind of a part of her that I don't really understand. She didn't keep it simple. She had to make them big, extravagant lies. She told her family that she had been accepted, not only was she in college, but she had been accepted to a pharmacology program at the University of Toronto. Which, spoiler alert, she wasn't in that class, and she actually chose this particular lie because her father wanted her to go down this path. Well, initially he wanted her to be a doctor. That was what his goal was for her, but he found that Jennifer didn't have the stomach for it, so he's like, okay, fine, you can do pharmacology then, that's still in the medical field, so that'll be good enough. And she went so far to keep up these lies that she went out with the money that she had from these jobs where she was filling her time with, right? She needed money for her charade. She would go and buy textbooks, and she would study pharmacology, and she'd fill notebooks with notes about the subject and then show it to her family to be like, see, yeah, look at what I'm learning in school. It's extreme to me. So while all of this is happening, Jennifer is actually still living at home part-time, but she had convinced her parents on some of the days that she was supposedly in school, that she should live with a friend of hers who lived near the campus so she wouldn't have to go as far and travel as far. And they were like, okay, that seems reasonable. But what they didn't know is this friend was actually Jennifer's boyfriend. This was a man named Daniel Chi Kwong Wong, and the two had actually met in high school and had been secretly dating for years. So Jennifer was literally lying about everything, and no one knew who she really was and what she was really doing, because to her friends and family, she was a high school graduate. She was in college in a pharmacology program where she was doing so well that she was having scholarships pay for everything. But in reality, she was a high school dropout living with her boyfriend. Which is like, fine, Jennifer, be a high school dropout, live with your boyfriend, but just stop lying about it. Right? I guess. I don't know. It's just weird. It's a weird thing. And I guess Jennifer's parents, like Daniel wasn't the type of guy that her parents would have found suitable for her anyway, because though he was in college, he wasn't really an academic, he wasn't an aggressively smart person, and he also sold like a little weed on the side, which would be like a giant no for them. So Jennifer and Daniel met in high school, and though initially Jennifer wasn't super into him, she didn't really see him as like a potential romantic partner, she was eventually won over by him because of the attention and the affection that he always showed her. The more Jennifer was around Daniel, the more he grew on her, and the more she found that he was really good for her and her mental state, and he really comforted her when she needed that sort of comfort. And the two really solidified their relationship and their feelings for each other when they were on a high school trip to Europe, which, real quick, did your high school go on field trips to Europe? Because that's wild to me. I went to medieval times, okay? That's where my school was, but I also grew up like as a little desert rat. But anyways, on this trip to Europe, Jennifer had had a pretty bad panic attack, and it was Daniel who was there to soothe her and calm her and make her feel all right. And from that time on, she was like, okay, this is it. This is the one for me. I'm into it. The two were just obsessed with each other. They talked and texted all the time, in secret, of course, because her parents would never allow it. And they were just like a disgustingly cute, like high school couple. You know the types. They had little cute pet names for each other. She was Monkey and he was Mr. Bubbles. Because of course. And I can't judge there because me and my husband call each other Fish. That's our nickname for each other, so I know that that's a thing. But Mr. Bubbles? I don't get it. But I guess most people wouldn't get Fish, so what am I saying? The two were also physically intimate, so as I'm sure you can imagine, as a teenage girl, this solidified her bond and her codependence on Daniel. And in that obsession with that relationship, she started to change a lot. She was less interested in school. Her whole life became obsessed with Daniel, being around Daniel. She even got a job at a pizza shop where he worked so that they could spend more time together. And of course, as I said, she was staying with him and his family because they were cool with it. They didn't care. And lying to her parents about it. But she was also like an adult. So for comparison, while this is happening and Jennifer's doing all this, her brother Felix is like killing it in her parents' eyes. He is in college and he is there for mechanical engineering. His father wanted Felix to not put together cars and make car parts the way him and his wife did, but he wanted his son to like design cars in like just a better position, still in the same kind of career as him and his wife, but just a better position. And in his parents' eyes, he was killing it. He was doing exactly what they wanted him to do, unlike Jennifer, who was doing what she wanted to do. So as I've stated, Jennifer was pretty extreme with the lies that she told her parents. Not only was she in college, but she was also in a pharmacology program, and that wasn't enough for her. She was also a volunteer at a hospital for sick children. And this is where things got a little sticky for Jennifer, and her parents were kind of catching on because they were like, that's weird. She doesn't have like a uniform or a badge or anything to show that she volunteers there. So one day her mom, who was just like onto her bullshit because she was on top of her kids, she was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to see what's going on. So one day Jennifer was like, okay, bye, I'm going to go to work. And her mom was like, okay, bye, see ya. Just kidding, I'm going to follow you, right? So she follows Jennifer to work and quickly finds that there is no work. So her parents were pissed, particularly her father, and her dad was about to just completely kick her out of the house, disown her, be done with her, because I mean, she'd been lying to them forever while living under their roof and using their money. You know what I mean? Like, they're taking care of her still and she's just out screwing around. But her mom was like, no, 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 don't kick her out. Let's let her stay here and let's try to get her back on track. So at this point, she was given an ultimatum. Jennifer's now 24 years old. She has to choose between staying home with her parents. She'd be able to live under their roof. She'd be able to use their money. They'd take care of her. But she was only going to be allowed to leave the house, take the car, go anywhere if she was going to school or if she was going to work. And she would only be able to work doing the piano lessons, no longer at the pizza place where David worked. And of course, she was no longer allowed to see her boyfriend, David. Or she could leave. She could do whatever she wanted. She could go, she could live with her boyfriend, she could do whatever. She could be completely free as an adult, doing whatever she wanted, but she'd have no access to her family emotionally. They would disown her, and she'd have no access to their money. Now, you may think this is extreme, but Jennifer's 24 years old. She could just go. She could live with her boyfriend, she could start her own life, she could do the jobs that she wants to do and go down the path that she wants to go down. But she's choosing to stay, in my opinion, because they can take care of her financially, whereas right now she's just doing part-time work. You know what I mean? Like, she didn't want to lose the money. Because it's definitely not because she cares about her family, or she wouldn't do what she goes on to do. You know what I mean? So now her parents knew everything. They found out that she had never even graduated high school. So they got her back into school so that she could finish high school, get her diploma. And once she was done with her diploma, they got her working on applying to colleges. So of course, because she's staying back at home, Jennifer had rules. She needed to regain her parents' trust. As I said, she was only allowed to go to school and to her job doing piano lessons. She was not allowed to have any contact with David. But do you think that she stuck to these rules? No, her and David were obviously speaking in secret. So she told her parents she was choosing them. She was choosing their rules. She was going to stay home. But she had other ideas in mind, which is why we're filming this video today. So Daniel and Jennifer are still talking, right? But what's weird is that Daniel was sort of like over it. He was kind of over Jennifer. He was kind of over all of her drama, all of the restrictions that came along with her. And he had actually gotten a new girlfriend, and Jennifer had a lot of trouble with this. Jennifer started telling Daniel lies about his new girlfriend, saying that his new girlfriend was constantly calling her and harassing her and threatening her, and that she had found a bullet in her mailbox and that she knew that it was from Daniel's new girlfriend. She also told Daniel, and this is really screwed up, but she told Daniel that his new girlfriend had gotten a group of men to break into her home and rape her. I don't think Daniel believed her, but he definitely entertained her and kept talking to her and kept her around. He just liked the idea of having, you know, two women. He was just like a dick, a guy. You ladies, am I right? Okay, you know. But you know, even though she was saying some crazy stuff and being pretty crazy, it worked, and Daniel did stay in her life. So now we come to spring of 2010, where Jennifer started to take steps towards a horrible, horrible decision that she could never take back. So Jennifer got in contact with this guy that she knew in high school. I don't think this was like a friend that she kept throughout her years after graduating, but she had remembered that this guy was like a bit of a hard ass and had bragged about robbing people at knife point. So he was just kind of bad news. And she's like, oh, that's exactly what I need, is somebody who's, you know, morally not so great. So she got in contact with him and she's like, so listen, I am in the market for a hitman because I would love, just absolutely love, if my parents would be murdered. And he was like, okay, so this isn't really something that I handle, but you know what? I do know a guy. So he got her in contact with a guy named Ricardo, and she told Ricardo what she wanted, and the two of them arranged for him to collect $1,500 from her, and then he would go and murder her father at his place of work. Now, what ended up happening, apparently, is that this guy took her money and just like dipped. He was like, okay, bye. But both men deny that this ever happened, but she says that it did. So now she's just like, shit, this guy took my money and just bailed, and what am I gonna do, call the cops? No, I can't, because it was for a illegal hit, essentially. Not essentially, it was for an illegal hit. So at this point, Jennifer starts working with her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, Daniel, to try to figure out exactly what they should do. And they come to the conclusion that they should probably go with like a more professional hitman, and that they could make an arrangement with him to pay him after Jennifer got her inheritance from her parents dying, like the life insurance, all that jazz, that they estimated would be about $500,000. After her parents were dead and they got this money, the two had a plan of just running off together and starting over and living happily ever after with her parents' money. So Daniel set her up with a burner phone so that she could, you know, correspond with this hitman without it being traceable. And he set her up with a man that he knew that he thought would be more reputable than her like shitty little high school friends. This man's name was Lenford Roy Crawford, who simply went by the nickname Homeboy, and he agreed to give Jennifer the friend's discount of a whopping $10,000 to murder her parents. Homeboy then went on to enlist the help of 2 other men, one named Eric Sean Sniper Carty, and the other named David, ooh, help me out here, Milva Gannum. Milva Gannum? Help me out, guys. Anybody know? That is a last name that I am just not gonna do well, and I just know it. It's actually weird that Jennifer ended up going through with this crime when it finally did happen, because just literally days before the murder was going to take place, the crime that inevitably brings us here today, she was texting with Daniel, and Daniel told her, hey, so here's the thing. You know how you love me and you care about me so much? Well, that's how I care about this other girl that I'm dating, not you. And she was like, okay, then call up the hitman. And he was like, wait, what? I thought you wanted this for you. And she was like, I do. And that was like it. But she almost called it off because it clearly had to do with Daniel. On November 8th, 2010, in Markham, Ontario, at approximately 11 p.m., 3 men entered the home that Jennifer Pan shared with her parents while her mother, 53-year-old Beck, watched TV downstairs, and her father, 56-year-old Hann, slept peacefully in his bed. They entered through the front door that Jennifer left unlocked. The trio first subdued Beck, who was downstairs watching TV, and then one of the men went upstairs and woke up Hann by placing the barrel of the gun directly to his head, which I cannot even imagine how terrifying it would be to wake up out of a sleep to a man you don't know with a gun to your head. Anyways, this man then leads Hann downstairs to be with his wife. They're sitting on the couch, they're asking him like, where's the money, while the other men are ransacking the home. They took money from the house. They took money both from Hann and Bick's bedroom and also money that Jennifer had. And then the men took Beck and Hann downstairs to their basement. They threw a blanket over their heads and they shot them both. And Beck's last words were pleading for her daughter's life. Jennifer's father, Hann Pan, was shot once in the shoulder and once in the face. And somehow he survived his injuries. But his wife, Beck Pan, who had been shot multiple times, once in the neck, once in the back, and once in the head, did not survive. The 3 men were in and out of the house by 11:30. Once the men left the house, Jennifer, who had apparently been tied up to the banister the entire time, was able to get her phone and call 911. And this call is horrifying because Jennifer does play it up really well. Like she's a good little actress, but in the middle of the call, all of a sudden you hear Hann in the background screaming and you hear Jennifer's surprise because she thought both of her parents were dead. And all of a sudden she hears her dad and realizes that he is alive. And what we find out later, I'm sure this girl was shitting her pants at the idea of him surviving this. So police arrive and Hann was taken to the hospital, obviously, because he's still alive. And Jennifer was taken to the same hospital and she's just checked for injuries, which she has none. And then she goes and she sits next to her father, sits at his bedside for a couple of hours before police come and take her to the station for questioning because she's the one witness. She's the one survivor. And that's how she's treated at first. It's just like a survivor of a horrible, horrible situation. Excuse me, not the sole survivor, but the sole lucid, awake survivor, because Hann was actually put into an induced coma. They put him in a coma to help his body recover from what he had gone through. So he's out and Jennifer's the only one that they can actually talk to, is what I meant to say. So police have her in the station and they ask her for a statement of what happened. And this is what Jennifer told police happened during her first interview. Jennifer says that that night she was in her room watching TV and talking on the phone when all of a sudden she heard her mother call for her father to come downstairs. And she also heard voices that she did not recognize alongside her mother. So she got off the phone and she turned down her TV to listen to what was going on. She says that she was scared, but for whatever reason, even though she had a phone, she did not call the police. She says the men then entered her room and they led her around at gunpoint to collect money throughout the house. They took $2,500 from her, which apparently was money she had saved from piano lessons, and then went to her parents' room and stole $1,100 from their nightstand. During this time, Jennifer says that she had been tied up with shoelaces, and then they took her and they tied her up to the upstairs banister where she couldn't really see, but she could hear, and she heard the men order her parents downstairs. The gentleman, actually, she said she heard the gentleman order her parents downstairs, and she said she could just hear her mother pleading with the men to just let her daughter come with them, that she just wanted her daughter. She then says that she can hear from the basement the men yelling, "You lied to us," and then hearing 2 pops, her mother scream, and 2 more pops. She then said she told police that she had had her cell phone hidden in the waistband of her pants, and that once the men left the house, she then called the police, even though her hands were tied behind her back. So police thought this was really weird. It didn't make a lot of sense to them because they didn't see why these men would break into a house intent on committing a robbery, then attempt to murder 2 people, successfully murder 1 person, and willingly leave a living victim. Not only did they leave her living, but she was essentially completely unharmed, and on top of that, not much was stolen. Like, the family had 2 pretty expensive cars. I believe it was a Lexus and a Mercedes. There were TVs in the house that were untouched, and there was money on the counter that was just not taken. So it's like, if they were just robbers, they were really, really bad at their job. They should probably look into a new profession. Like, robbing does not seem to be their strong suit. So just 2 days later, police actually do bring Jennifer back in for another interview, and at this point she's being treated as more as a suspect and not just a distraught daughter and victim. They don't push her too hard because they just want to see if like she'll make any inconsistencies, if she'll say any inconsistencies, you know what I'm trying to say. And so they just kind of let her talk, and when she first gets there, she even tells them that she's really nervous, she's worried because her brain is scattered, that she'll say the wrong thing, which she does, and she just kind of goes in and out from seeming very emotional to very matter-of-fact and unemotional. But the investigators could tell, like some people, you know, that does happen naturally, but they could tell that she was kind of turning it on and off when she felt it was appropriate, and then kind of slipping when answering a question that she had a correct answer to, if that makes sense. So this time around, Jennifer's story changed, but only like a little bit, just little inconsistencies here and there. She said again that she was in her room and she was on the phone when she started to hear voices, so she got off the phone, turned it down. This time she says that she heard footsteps that she recognized as not her parents' footsteps, so she like opened her door a crack and looked out, and this is where a man was standing that immediately put a gun in her face, tied her up, and robbed her at gunpoint. She says they took her from room to room, making her collect all the money, and then they took her downstairs where her parents were, that the men were asking her parents over and over, "Where's the money? Where's the money?" So she would give contradictory statements, and the officer would kind of point it out, and it seems like she would catch on to it, kind of watch his cues, listen to what he said, and kind of adjust there. And she kept apologizing every time he would point it out, or she could see in his face that like she had said something wrong. She kept apologizing, and he said to not apologize because she had nothing to feel sorry for unless she was lying. So at one point, the officer's like, "Okay, here's what I need you to do. I need you to show me how you were able to get your phone from your waistband and call 911 while being tied up." And when he asks her this, dude, she panics. You can see it all over her face. She literally says to the cop, "Can't I just tell you?" And he's like, "No, bitch, you have to show me." Like he didn't say that, but I'm sure that's what he was thinking. Like, no, you need to show me. So she like sits there. You can see that she's panicking. She like has a cup, she grabs it and like slams her drink down, and then gets up and takes off her sweater, and she goes to show him. And at this point, the cop was likely thinking like, "I've got her. There's no way this is possible." But surprisingly to everyone, she was able to do it. It doesn't seem like she had planned it because she was so panicked, but she was able to do it. She said she put her phone all the way on loud, so that she could hear the officer, and she was able to call just holding it down at her waist. The officer does end up getting a little more, not aggressive, but assertive with her at this point. And he's like talking to her about her parents and about the way that they raised her and about how she felt about that and how she felt about the ultimatum that they inevitably gave her. She just says, you know, "It sucked, but I made my choice. I wanted to be with my family more than I wanted the other life." And he starts to kind of push her, gets a little more accusatory. He's like, "Did you do this? Do you know what happened? Did you have any part of this? Did you cause this?" And at that point, she gets a little like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And she actually calls him on it. She's like, "Hey, you're scaring me. It seems like you're accusing me." So he just explains to her, like, "This is my job. You're the only person I can talk to because your mom is dead and your dad is in a coma." So they let her leave because they don't really have anything to hold her on at that point, but they do put her under surveillance, and they even have somebody watching her while she's at her own mom's funeral. And it is reported that she didn't cry at all. She mostly just stared down at the floor during the funeral. So while all of this is happening, Jennifer's dad wakes up from his coma, and to everyone's surprise, he remembers pretty much everything. There was a big problem with there's a big worry, rather, that he wouldn't be able to remember anything because he got shot in the face. He had some pretty bad brain damage, but he remembered everything, and his statements contradicted Jennifer's in some pretty serious ways, like the fact that she wasn't tied up. She was walking around the house chatting with the intruders like they were friends. Jennifer. They even had Hann, her father, call her and pretend to have amnesia, saying he didn't remember anything, and kind of talk to her and be like, who do you think would do this? Do you think maybe your ex had something to do with this? Because, you know, we told you that you couldn't see him. And she was like, no, I don't think he has anything to do with this. And police wanted to put Hann on the stand to just arrest her and use his statement at trial to get a conviction. But they knew that a defense attorney could completely destroy him on the stand because he had brain damage. He did. And also they thought that the defense would bring up the fact that his daughter and him had a bad relationship and use that as maybe her dad having some vendetta against her to blame her for this when she didn't do it. So they needed a confession. They wanted a confession. So they brought her back in for questioning on November 22nd, 2010. And this time they had like this badass dude interrogator who was like the wolf. You know the one that's like, okay, let's do it. Bring him in. And they did. And it was good. He used an approach where first he got her comfortable and made her feel like they were friends. He talked to her about her life, about growing up, about her relationship with David and with her parents, and just tried to like seem like he was on her side, like he was her friend, like he got it. They talked about her depression and her apparent suicide attempts and her cutting. He also employed the tactic of switching up interrogation rooms on her, and this has been proven to be successful in interrogations. I don't understand the science behind it. Interrogations are just crazy to me, because in my mind, I would never admit to anything ever in life, but I mean, they get people to admit to shit that they haven't even done, so I don't know. But he did that. He also got her to admit that like her parents expected way too much of her, and that it was really hard for her growing up because they were unrealistic expectations, and that she wasn't as smart as her parents thought that she should be. And that her parents often compared her to other people and be like, see, this is what you could be if you just tried. And she said that this didn't really hurt her as much when she was an adult because like they had done it her entire life. So he's chipping away at her. He then switches it up and he starts not attacking her. He just gets very direct and he's like, listen, I am trained to know if someone's lying. This is what I do. This is why I'm the one that's here right now. My whole background is being able to look at a person, hear what they say, and know if they're lying. And listen to me, little girl. You have been lying. And I get it. You've had to lie your entire life because of how you were raised and how your parents were with you, which, by the way, was abuse. And that's why you're lying here today. But you are a good person and you can do the right thing, etc., etc., etc. So he goes on with his speech at her and she just sits there, dude, and she's like aggressively stroking her ponytail for like comfort. And he keeps like, every time she would try to like shut him down and be like, well, no. He would be like, no. Listen, I know. And then he'd inch closer and closer and closer to her face. And he was giving her like justifications for her actions. Like, I get it. I get why you'd have to do what you did because of A, B, and C. And every time he thought he would get her, she would be like, but what's going to happen to me? And he had to evade this question because apparently this is one of the few things that police can't lie to you about is what will happen if you admit to something. So he'd be like, well, here, I don't know. It depends on what you tell me, things like that. And he keeps chipping at her till finally she admits that she did hire somebody to do the home invasion, right? But that they weren't supposed to kill her parents. They were supposed to kill her. Okay, that makes total sense, but okay. She says that she hired these men to kill her because she had attempted suicide in the past and had been unsuccessful, so she just wanted it done and done right and efficiently. And that she wanted to die because she was tired of not being able to live up to her parents' expectations. She said she no longer wanted to be a disappointment to her family, and he sat there and he let her tell her whole story that made zero sense, as I'm sure you can imagine. When she was done telling her whole story, he went in on her. He's like, you know what? You've already admitted to bringing these men in the house, so there is nothing for me to lose here except for to just go in on you. So he's like, you know what? You are a liar. This is bullshit. You brought these men in to kill your parents. Come on, Jennifer, tell the truth. Be a good person. This is obviously ridiculous. You clearly did this. And since she had admitted to bringing the men in and paying for the home invasion, I mean, he had her up against the wall. There's nothing else she could do. And I mean, that's such a dumb story, Jennifer. What were you thinking? Not that I want her to get away with it, but like, that's so dumb. I don't know. She seemed like smart until she got real dumb. So he then tells her that she is arrested for murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. And she looks at him and she's like, I thought you were on my side. He's like, no, you dumbass. What the hell? No, I'm not. Goodbye. And he goes to leave the room and she's like, can't you stay with me? And he's like, no, I gotta go out there and tell these dudes that, like, I'm done and to come arrest you. She was just a piece of work. On March 14th, 2014, Jennifer's trial began and she pled not guilty, of course. The prosecution used her interrogation tape against her. The detective who interrogated her, you know, her little buddy, well, he testified against her. And 116 text messages between her and her boyfriend Daniel in the hours leading up to the murder were used against her, and they spoke in detail about what was going to happen. How Jennifer would leave the door unlocked, all that jazz, and this also implicated Daniel in the crime. Jennifer tried to claim that people were just reading the text messages wrong, that this wasn't what they were talking about, and that she had actually tried to cancel the hit. She had called Homeboy and told him, like, hey, I don't want you to do this anymore because my life has improved so much and I no longer want to die. She continued saying this hit was on her, was for her, on her. That was her whole thing. And there were some text messages of like a date where Homeboy was like, you know, what's the date? She gave a date and she's like, oh, no, this wasn't the date where my parents were going to be killed. This was the date where he was going to come and pick up the cancellation fee because I changed my mind. Apparently they had negotiated a cancellation fee and he was going to come over and pick it up on the same night that her parents were murdered. Yep. During the trial, Jennifer had to sit there and listen to Daniel's attorney tell the court how Jennifer was manipulative and obsessed with him and that it was all her and nothing was Daniel's fault. And she just had to sit there and listen to this guy that she loved, that she had essentially had her mother killed for, just throw her under the bus. Which, I mean, he had already been telling her that he was like in love with another girl, so this shouldn't have come as a huge surprise, but man. Karma, I guess, right? Damn. In the end, Jennifer, Daniel, and all three men who came into the home and actually committed the murder, Lenford Roy Crawford, Eric Sean Sniper Carty, and David Milvaganam, yep, ended up going down for it. They were all found guilty of first-degree murder and given life sentences without the possibility of parole for 25 years. So which essentially means they have to serve 25 years before they are eligible for parole. It was worded a little bit weird there, I realize. Eric Carty died in prison in 2018. He was in jail not only for Bick's murder, but also for the murder of another man named Kirk Matthews. As far as I was able to find, all the other men are still alive and kicking, just hanging out in jail, and Jennifer is now in her 30s, and she will not be eligible for parole until 2035 when she is in her 50s. Jennifer and Daniel are not allowed to speak at all while in prison, obviously, and her own family had requested an order from the court stopping Jennifer from contacting them at all, and they have cut off all communication with her. Which honestly, like, that sounds sad, but I get it. How could you ever talk to her again? Why would you want to? She's an asshole. With all of that said, that, my friends, is the story of Jennifer Pan, her web of lies, her double life, and her horrible crime. What do you think? Does anyone think, I'm very curious, that it's at all possible that she actually did hire these men to kill her and then tried to cancel, but then they just showed up and killed her mother instead? Like, does that seem like an option? I'm gonna say no. In my opinion, she definitely 100% hired these men to kill her parents, but I mean, I'm open to the discussion and why you think the alternative. What do you think the motive was? Like, where do you lean? Do you think it was she was just tired of her parents' strict upbringing and she just wanted them dead for it? Do you think it's because she wanted to be with her boyfriend? Or do you think that maybe it was the monetary gain? I am personally of the mind that it was a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, and a little bit of column C. Because think about it, right? If her parents were gone, she would have the option to, 1, live whatever life she wanted without worrying about impressing or letting anyone down. All that stress is gone. 2, she could openly be with Daniel without any repercussion. I mean, he wasn't even that into her anymore, but she, in her mind, could do that if she wanted to. And 3, she would have all of their money. You know what I mean? Like, it's so screwed up to say, but like, she would get everything she wanted if they were not in the picture. And I feel like there may be a little bit of victim blaming in the comments because most of you guys are cool, but like some of you can be victim blamers. It's just how it goes, especially because the Brat Pack isn't the only people who watch this. Some people just watch, don't subscribe. They're just people who come in with their opinions. And I would prefer kindly if you wouldn't leave victim blaming comments down below, because here's the thing. Plenty of kids grow up with strict parents and don't go on to do what she did. They never hit her. They put a roof over her head and supported her even into her adulthood, okay? She could have left at any time. Maybe you don't agree with their parenting style. I'm not saying I think that was right. That's not what I'm about. But they didn't deserve to die for it. And I would hope if you're like, a regular member of this channel, that victim blaming wouldn't be what you're about, because it's not what I'm about and it's not what I would imagine my friends would be about, and I consider you guys my friends, so that's my opinion on that. But anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope that you found it interesting and informative, and it gave you all the information that you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I hope you enjoyed it. I want you to enjoy everything I'm putting out into the world. That's why I am doing it. And I just want to thank you for remembering Bich with me today, and Hann and Felix. I can't even imagine what Hann and Felix are going through. I can't imagine the trauma and the trust issues of knowing that your child and your sister did this to your mother and your wife and tried to do this to you. It's just like horrible, and I can't imagine recovering from that. And then Bich lost her life. She was murdered. She was killed while begging for her daughter's life. The same daughter who hired these men to come here and murder her. And that's just horrible. And that's one of the what people need to realize is you can't take these things back. She's gone. That's it forever. Anyways, please let me know of any cases you would like to see me cover down below. As you know, I have a very long list of cases that I want to cover, but every time you leave a suggestion, I add the case with your name next to it to give you a shout out, because I know you're filled with good taste and good ideas. Otherwise, you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell, because I put out a new video every single week and I'd love to hang out with you. Yes, you. Specifically you. And if you would like to follow me more consistently, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Bratterstein. I also have a Facebook page and a Facebook group. Everything will be listed down below for your pleasure. Same with like the makeup, the earrings, everything's always listed down below if you're curious, because I know like you might want to know what this lime green eyeshadow is because it's sick as fuck. And with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That's tight. You're tight. Please be a better person than you were yesterday. At the very least, be better than Jennifer Pan. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.